So as many of you know, Brizy or Brizy, depending upon the way you want to say it, is really gathering some momentum at the moment. It's still currently only offering the free version, which is kind of limited, but it's still a great starting point. And in this video, I want to show you how we can use that and create our first fully fledged page using just the Brizy or Brizy editor. I'm Paul C, and welcome to WPTuts, where I show you how to create beautiful WordPress websites. If this is your first time on the channel, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell icon to be notified of our weekly new content as soon as it's added to the channel. So before we start this video, there's one simple thing I want to get out of the way before we get moving, and that is the name. Is it Brizy or is it Brizy? I've seen both of those terms being used, but for me, I'm going to call it Brizy. Right or wrong, it just feels more natural. Now what we're going to do in today's video is I'm going to show you how you can create your first page using the Brizy editor. Now it's one of those things that you can use it in conjunction with a theme, and in this case I've done exactly that. So I've been created a basic layout using Ocean WP for my header and footer. The rest of the page is completely built up of a combination of using the building blocks that are part of Brizy, and also some custom design options. And if we take a scroll through the page, you can see this is the kind of thing we're going to recreate. It's all very simple and straightforward, but I want to take you through step by step so you can get a good foundational knowledge of how you work with the Brizy editor to create your pages. So let's take a look at jumping into the back end, and let's start this page from scratch and go through the entire process. I've gone ahead and jumped over into the dashboard of WordPress, and I've created a new blank page. I've given it the title of Brizy Home, and we're now ready to set up some of the parameters before we jump into the Brizy editor itself. Now these are going to be things that are dependent upon the theme that you're using. Like I said, in this instance we're using Ocean WP, so you're going to see different options if you're using a different theme. All I want to do is come down and make sure that the content layout and everything is set up the way I need it to be. First of all, content layout we're going to set to 100% full width, so it gets rid of any sort of side columns. We get rid of that. And also I'm going to disable the margins. I don't want those to influence the header and the footer areas that we're working with. So once I've done that, I'm going to click to update or save the page. Once that's done, we can now come in and start editing with Brizy. So let's just jump into the Brizy editor. And once that loads up, you'll see we're now presented with a completely blank page. This is because by default, Brizy is going to be using its own default blank template. We can change that over to work with the themes template to make sure that we get the headers and footers. It's very easy. All we do is come down to the little hamburger menu in the bottom left hand corner, click on that, and you see the very top option is the page template. At the moment it's using the Brizy template. We can click on there, and this example we're going to choose default, which is the theme's default template with the headers and footers in place. So you can see there's our header, and if we scroll down there's our footer, which is pretty much blank, but you get the idea. So now we've got a couple of ways that we can work with this. We can start building from using just plain building blocks, or we can use the blocks that ship with Brizy itself. So all we're going to do is we're going to click to open that up, and you can see there's our range of different building block elements. We can filter those down very easily by going through any of these, but to start off with, let's create our own first completely blank block. To do that, we need to click on the blank block option. Now don't be confused by thinking, if we jump back out of that, you can come up and click on the plus, and then you can just drag and drop in text or buttons and so on. You need to have a blank building block first of all before you can start adding content to it. So the first thing is click and add a new blank block. There's our blank block. We've got margins and padding and so on all set up in there for us. Now we've also got two columns set up in our single row. We can get rid of the second one, which is what we want to do. Just click on the top right hand corner on the little blue icon, and then we can just click the trash can to get rid of that. We're now replaced with one simple single cell that we can work with. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is set this background and put an image in there. So to do that, we come up to this little symbol in the top right hand corner, click on there, and the first thing we're going to do is set a background. So you can click on background, and you can see everything is completely empty at the moment, and we can choose from an image, a video, or a map. We can also set parallax effects in here, but for now we're going to leave that. Let's just go and choose the image we want. So let's click. Once we've done that, we'll choose the image we want to work with, and this is our header background, and we'll select that. There's our background in place. If we want to apply a parallax effect, we can do that right now, so we can have animated or fixed. And if we set that to fixed, you'll see it now positions it exactly as it needs to have that effect. If we want to at any point, we can come back in and change this very easily, but for now I'm happy with that. So the next thing I want to do is just apply an overlay over the top of this, just to give it a little bit more contrast. All we need to do is click on the second option, which is the colors option. Very first thing we have in there is the overlay tab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose black as my color, and you can see that makes it completely black, loses the image behind it, but we can just simply drag down the opacity by using this very right hand slider. So we'll set that to about 50%, so it gives us a nice contrast between the background image and where we want the actual text to overlay. Now, speaking of text in Brizy, it works slightly differently to what you might be used to with other page builders. If you've ever used something like Microsoft Word, you'll know you can create styles in there and apply those styles to anything you want on your page. And then if you edit the style, everything that uses that style will reflect those changes. You can do the same thing with Brizy. So before we start putting any headers and things like that in there, let's take a look at how we can set some things up. We can then reference those at any point and make changes. The same holds true when we're working with colors. So we come over to this third icon on the left hand side. You can see this is the styling block. And at the top we've got a range of colors that are all set up and predefined. Now you can change these at any point, and then any color that's using, or any element that's using that color from those color chips but there, you can see that they will then update and reflect the changes of the color. And the same goes for the fonts and so on, for the headings and the different styles you can set up. So you can very quickly and easily create a whole set of custom styles and custom colors and then apply those site-wide very easily. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that we've got everything set up the way we want. So you can see we've got hero, master title, and we've got new styles and so on. So we can add a new one in there at any point. All we need to do is just click on add new, and that allows us to go and then define exactly what that's going to be. So let's take a look at that in action. So we click on add new. All we need to do now is come up, we can click and rename this style. So let's just say we're going to call this one small hero header. And then we can just change the fonts on there. So light, we're going to change that to be normal. We're going to up the font size to somewhere in the region of, say, 40 pixels. It might be a little bit too much. We can fine tune and tweak should we need to. And then we're going to adjust the letter spacing. So we're going to give this about a 5-point letter spacing. Again, if we need to adjust, we can do that. So that's our custom style pretty much done. All we need to do now is choose the font we want to use, and we're going to use the Montserrat font. So you can see the little style sort of icon at the bottom shows us what it's going to look like. Not necessarily to scale, but it still allows us to see the font that's being used and all those kind of good things. So now that we've done that, we're now ready to go and add some text in and then use this styling. So what we're going to do is come over and we're going to say we're going to drag a text item over into our main area for our hero image at the top. We're going to put the text that we want in there. So let's just select that, and we're going to change this one. And I'm simply basing this on a design that I've done recently for a client. So let's just drop the text in there. We'll just grab that and we'll set the color to be white and the alignment to be centered. Now you can see that we get this context strip of icons that allow us to do various different things. We can adjust the alignment, we can adjust the text color, add links and so on. And we'll look at that as we move through using this to create our first page. You're going to see this is going to be used quite a lot. So now that we've set that, we can go and apply a style to this. And it's very easy. All we need to do is come over to the T for typography, click on there, and you can see at the moment it's set to be paragraph. If we just click on there and we scroll through, all those styles that have been created are now available to us. So the small hero header that we've just styled, I can click on that and you can see it immediately picks up that styling. So very easy. Now at the moment that's just a little bit too big and the actual spacing isn't exactly what I want. So let's just come back over and scroll down to our heading that we styled. So this is a small hero header. We can click on that and now we can make adjustments to that, and you can see that's reflected on screen on the actual element that's used in this particular style. So let's just drop the font size down a little bit, take that down to maybe 24 points or 24 pixels, and the line spacing or the letter spacing is looking pretty good. So that's done, and as you can see that is incredibly easy, and now that can be applied anywhere we want on any page throughout our entire site. So bearing that in mind, it's always worthwhile before you start building your site to go through and set up the styles you're going to use throughout your site. Obviously you can come back and tweak them should you need to, and the same goes for the colors. But taking the time to do this at the beginning will save you a lot of time when you're actually creating the layouts for your site. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is put the main heading in. So what we're going to do is the same again. We're going to click to add another text block, drop that below our little subheading. We're going to put our text in there so we know exactly what we want. So let's just put our heading in there. We'll set our color on that as well. So we'll just highlight it, and we want this to be white. So we'll set that to white, and our alignment to be centered. And next we can just go through and apply some styling to this. Now I've already set my style up previously, and all I need to do is come into the typography and just simply scroll through the list until I find the one I want, which is the Hero Master Title, click, and I'm done. That's how easy it is. We can adjust things like the spacings and so on here. So you can see at the moment it's probably looking a little bit too far apart. So we can fine tune and tweak that. So we can simply come in, adjust the gap above and below if we want to. If that doesn't work for us, we can just click on the more settings, and then what we can do is we can adjust the margins directly in here. So just adjust the top and bottom margins to get everything lined up the way we want. Once we're happy, click outside, and that's looking pretty good. So next up, we're just going to simply drop in a line just to separate things out. Drop that in, and as you can see, it is very, very easy to work with. You can simply click and start adjusting. So we'll set this to be a thinner, we'll set it to be 2 points, we'll set the color to be white, alignment to center, that's fine. And what we're going to do then is just adjust the width to be somewhere in the region of about 10%, I think is pretty good. 15 looks good. And again, if I want to make changes, I've got the more settings, so I can adjust the actual spacing around that. So if I think actually I want to get rid of those margins at the top and bottom, just to tighten things up a little bit, I can easily do that. If I want to adjust all 4 sides for either padding or margin, I can simply just use the little icon that allows me to link all the sides together, or to click the other option to actually separate them all, so each one operates independently. So the final thing we need to do now is just drop in another text block at the bottom, and this is going to be the information about the Arts Festival itself. So let's just drag that in, drop it in there, and we can now go through and style that and just copy the content in. So let's do that. So I can either apply a style now if I wanted to, or I can just use this and set this up independently, because I might not need to do this again. So let's go down that route. Let's just style this without using one of those predefined styles. First things first, let's just change the color of this to be white. Align it to the center. Let's just go through to the settings, and we'll just open up some additional settings. We've got the more settings on there, and what we're going to do now is we're going to adjust the margins on the left and right hand sides. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to use a percentage value as opposed to a pixel value. So what you do is click on the little percentage symbol next to the left and the right sides, and we're going to set this to be 10. So I'm just going to put a value of 10% in both of those. And as you can see, that now picks up the style and it just pushes everything in just a little tighter. If I want to change the font and the text and everything on there, I can do that very easily by going to the typography. And you can see at the moment it's set to paragraph. Well, if we make changes to anything in here, we can make changes to it and they won't be saved as a predefined template. So let's just say we bump the size of this up a little bit. You'll see it now changes from being one of the predefined things like paragraph or heading 1, heading 2 and so on to become custom. Now we've just got a completely custom set of options applied to that. And anytime we select this block of text, it'll tell us if we come into this that we're using the custom option and not one of the predefined styles. So that's looking pretty good. The only thing I want to do now is just increase the space above and below to give it a bit more header space, should we say, for our hero image. And we can do that. You can see when we mouse over the top, we're given this little blue strip and a pixel value to say how much padding is being applied to that particular section. So we can just simply drag that down. Let's just say we'll set this to something like 125. So we can do that visually, or we can do it manually. So we can come into this section at the top, click on more settings, and you can see 125 pixels, which is the value I just set up, and the bottom is still showing 75. So all I need to do is use the slider on there, and you can see it updates in real time. And obviously if I want to, I can click inside, I can input a value directly, or I can use the up and down arrows to fine tune and tweak to get exactly what I want. And there is the first part of our website completed. All totally custom. We've done that ourselves without relying on any of the block elements that are part of Brizy. Okay, so now that we've built out the header, let's go on and create the next section, which is a little piece of information where we give a festival survey, some text about it, and then a button to click on to actually go and view and fill out the actual questionnaire itself. So let's come in and add a new block. Now we've got the option again, we can start creating a custom new block if we want to, or we can just use any of the building blocks and use those as the basis to speed up the development process. So let's just have a little scroll through and see if we find something that actually looks like it's going to fit into exactly what I want. Now this one looks pretty good. It's got a button in there, it's got a header, and it's got some text, so it's kind of falling into what I want to do. So let's use that as the basis. So we'll click. You can see that now gets added in, and we can now use this and fine tune and tweak to get exactly what we want. So first of all, let's get rid of the things we don't want. I don't want this background image, so what I need to do is click on the little symbol in the top right hand corner, come to our background, and what we can do is we can just delete that from there, make sure that that's all clear, come into the colors and make sure that's set to white, and we're looking good to go. So that's the basics. Now let's get rid of this welcome, we don't need that. The About Brizy, we can just select that and we'll just paste in the heading we want, and I'll show you how we can easily fine tune that in a moment. So you can see we've got a spacer in there, and then we've got some text and then a button. So for the ease of this, I'm going to get rid of that button. The text element is fine. What we're going to do is just replace that with the text that I want. And that's simply a case of just selecting everything and pasting my text in. So that's good. The fonts and everything look pretty good on there. Obviously, if I wanted to, I could style those right now, or I could use any of the predefined styles that I've created. But it's looking good. It's picked up the style that I'm quite happy with. So finally, we need to drop in the button. So let's just come in and add our own button in. And all we need to do is just simply find the button element, and then we can just drag that over and drop it into our actual design. So let's just drop that there. Okay, so now we can go through and style the button. So the first thing I want to do is make sure it's the right color. So if we click this color chip, you can see it's using one of our predefined colors. So if we change everything, if we changed all this reddish color to blue or green or anything else further down the line, as long as we change that color chip, all the things that use that color will change accordingly. So it's very quick and easy and a great time saver. Okay, so I don't like the icon that's being used on there. So let's just change that. So let's come over to the icon. Let's just change this to something a bit more in keeping, and I'm going to use a pen. So this is looking pretty good. I like that. It's the wrong side, so all I need to do is just change the position of that. And you can see I've got things like spacing and so on, so I can bump the spacing if I want to adjust the distance between the icon and the actual content. Speaking of the content, at the moment that's saying the wrong thing, so I want to update that to what I need, which is complete questionnaire. There we go. Now with the font on there, I can easily come in. You can see that's set to button, so if I adjust that, I can adjust it through here. And if I do that, it'll become a custom style. However, if I want to apply this to everything, I need to come over to the styling section and find that relevant different style, so I can go through and I can adjust that. So there's our button. So all I need to do is click on that, and let's just change some options on this. Let's just change the letter spacing. As you can see, that now is immediately reflected on the screen. And let's just bump the size up a little bit and make sure it's using the font that I want and the weight that I want. So I'm going to go for bold on there. So that's exactly what I want it to look like. Now we redefined that style. Any button that uses that button styling will have exactly the same consistent style across everything on our site. I know I keep saying this, but it's worthwhile considering that, because when you're setting things up, whether you use a style because you might want to change it in the future, or you want it to be an independent element that you don't want to change in the future. Now before we finish with this section, there's a couple more things I want to do. The first thing is I don't want the text to be blue at the top. I want to change that. We're going to set that. Heading 2 is fine because we want to sort of have that weight. What we don't want to do is change the color. And again, we're going to use that predefined color chip to set to the orangey red color. And I'm also going to come in and just delete these extra spaces that have been placed into the design that I don't necessarily want. If I want to make changes to this particular element, I can come to this and I can just come in, go to the settings, we'll adjust the gap above. We set that to 10 pixels, or near as we can, and the gap below was set to 10 pixels as well. So that nice and neat kind of extra bit of space in there for us. That's looking pretty good. I like that. Okay, let's just hit update just to make sure we save those changes. And then we can move on to the next block, which is a more interesting sort of text information called an action kind of block. Now we could start from scratch, or we can take a look if there's something in the Brizy blocks that allow us to use that as the good starting point basis. So let's just open the blocks up and see if we can find something that's in keeping to what I'm looking to achieve. Now I've already gone through and taken a look, and I know that I've got one that's a good starting point if I come into the team section, and we're going to use the Our Founders. Now this just is going to show you how easy it is to take the basis of something and then make it something more custom. So let's just choose this. Now I don't want to have 2 people in here, I just want 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click to get rid of these. So I'll just delete the first one, delete the second one, and we're looking pretty good. Just going to reorder those, put the opposite way around. So I'm going to drag that over to the beginning. And you can see that's how easy it is to reposition things. Now I don't want the heading, I don't need those. It's completely irrelevant at this point. So we've got our starting point. We now need to get this a little closer to what I need it to be. First of all, let's just change the image. So we know we're working with the right image. So we're going to click on this cell. We're going to come up and we're going to choose the background. So we're going to delete that one from there. And we're going to use this one of someone making jewelry. Okay, so that's a good starting point. Next thing, I want to come over to this left-hand section, and what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of these margins because I want everything to be all nice and neat and tidy together. So we're going to come back in. First of all, we're going to come into the settings section. Everything's looking good in there. We've got more settings, and we're going to set this. We're going to come back into our margins. And as you can see, just by unchecking that, by linking them all together, we can now adjust everything very easily. So all the sizes are going to be adjusted simultaneously. So that's exactly what I want. I've got the background color the way I want it, everything in there. Let's get rid of the elements that I don't need. So I don't want these things. So we're going to take those out of there. And you'll notice as I take the elements out, this image on the right hand side is adjusting accordingly to compensate for the different size and spacing. So this is exactly what we want. Now the first thing I want to do is just replace this text with the text that I want. And just make sure that we've got everything laid out nice and neat and tidy on there. That's good. So the next thing we need to do is put in a separator line and the heading we want. So let's just come back in, choose a text element and drag and drop that above. We're going to put in the text that we want on there, which is about the Arts Festival. And we're going to drop a little separator line in as well. So we're just going to come in and we're going to choose a line, drop that in between there. And now let's just quickly style that. So we're going to change that to be 1 pixel dotted. We're going to set it to, that grey is fine. We want to set that to be left aligned, and we're going to come in and we're going to set this to be probably around about 15%. Somewhere around there. That looks pretty good. Okay, that's great. So there's a little separated line. Now we just need to deal with the heading. So let's click on that. Now I've already set out a predefined style for this. So let's just click, come back out to where it says paragraph, and we can just come in and say heading 2, and you can see that immediately picks up the size and everything. Or we can come in and choose any of the other ones. You can see each one is styled slightly differently. So let's just say heading 2 was the one we wanted, and all we need to do now is change the color on that to the reddish color that we want. And I'm also going to come in and just apply a little bit of extra spacing around this element. So all we need to do is just click this little blue arrow in the corner, come over to the settings, more settings, and in there we can start adjusting things. So this time we're going to come into the padding side of things, and we're going to adjust a little bit of padding at the top. We'll set that to maybe 40, and we'll do the same at the bottom. We'll set the bottom to 40 around there, and the left and the right we'll just push in a little bit more, maybe up to about 60, around about that kind of figure anyway. Actually, that looks pretty good. Okay, and I'm going to come into this and I'll make sure I'm happy with everything on there. That all looks pretty good. I'm liking the way this is looking. The only thing I want to do, as you can see, this is currently only using 90% width, so we're just going to grab that and drag it out just so we get a little bit more space in there. And everything looks pretty good, nice and neat and tidy. So next up, we're going to drop in 3 different call to action boxes for different information about the festival itself. We're also going to set a custom background. So again, what we're going to do is come in to add a new block, and we're going to go through and find a block that we think is quite close to what we're trying to achieve. For this, I'm going to jump into the features section, which is going to give me one that's close to what I want. Now this is the one we're going to use, the team members. And like I've said, just look for something that you think is quite close to the actual end result you want, that you can edit very easily. And then you'll find that you'll just start to get really, really quick at using these building blocks and getting rid of the things you don't want and getting exactly how you do want it. So let's get rid of these 3 at the bottom. We don't need those. One thing you should see is as you delete something, Brizy is intelligent enough to know that it's going to compensate for that element that's been taken out. So it's a great starting point. Team members, we don't need that in there. We want something different in there. So we're going to say this is the festival. Again, we're going to come back in, choose heading 2, just so everything is styled the way we want, and change our color to be the ready orange that we want. Very quick and easy. We're going to come back up. We're going to take this little line. We're going to duplicate that just by using the duplicate option. And then we can simply drag that over and drop it underneath the festival, and we can just tweak that to get exactly as you want. So we center that, we'll adjust that to be 10%, and that's looking good. What we're going to do is adjust the spacing above and below. That's looking good. And finally, we'll just drop in another text section, which in all honesty, we could just create a new one, or we can just take this one and we can just duplicate it because it's exactly the same as what we want. Bring that down, drop it below our divider, and now we can just adjust this to make sure it fits exactly as we want. So we'll just adjust the settings for the margins at the left and right hand side. So again, we'll use that percentage, and we'll set that to 10% for the left and the right. There we go. Everything's looking good. Ooh, we need to put that in the right place. There we go. Okay, so that's our section pretty much set up. We can now go through and just change the different images in here to get exactly what we want. So we'll just come in, delete the image that's in there and replace it with the ones that we want. So all very simple, nothing complex about this in the slightest. So now that we've gone through and set those up, we can just make sure everything is as we want it. So we can just change these titles over to the things that need to be in there. So I will just do that a second and then I will be back. Now obviously if we want to, we can easily come in and just fine tune everything on here to make sure it all works exactly as we want. So if we want a little bit more spacing on this element, we can simply come in, adjust the gap below to get exactly what we want, just to make sure everything is looking nice and neat and tidy. Same goes for this section. We can just come in, drag that down. We go maybe 120 pixels, somewhere around there. There we go. So we've got some nice breathing space between the various different elements. I'm going to come back into this one and we're going to reduce the top just to tighten that up a little. That's looking better. I like that. Okay, so there's the next section. So you've got one final section before we wrap this video up to create. And again, we're going to come into the new building blocks and we're going to go and find something that's very close to what we want. This is kind of going to be the news block element of our site. So we want it to look a little different to some of the other aspects, but still be in keeping with what we've created. So what we can do is just come in and filter these down and we're going to choose the news element. And this is the one we're going to use. So we're going to add that in there. As you can see, exactly the same as before, it drops the information in. So let's just quickly come in, change the background color to keep it exactly in line. So we want a white background on here. We're going to change this over to something different. So this is going to be festival news. We'll just change that over. And again, we're just going to pick up that styling by using heading 2 and pick up our color from our color chip to make sure that it's all in line. Come back up. We're going to choose this little block. We're going to duplicate that. We're going to come back up and we're going to duplicate the little separator. Once we've done that, we're just going to drag things down, position them where we want them, so everything is in line exactly as we need it to be. So let's just grab a little separator line, drag and drop that down as well. And there's pretty much our subheading. So let's just adjust anything that's not quite right on there. Ooh, that's fine. Let's just bump that up a little bit. There we go. So that's all nice and neat and in line. And now we can just change this information. So we know this needs to be that red color. So let's just change that over. Same for the second heading. Just change that to the red color. And finally, we can change the images to the ones that we want to use. So let's just delete this one from there and upload an image that we want. So we're going to use this watercolor painting one. And then we're going to do the same on the second one. Just change the image on there to something that we actually want to use, which is going to be this one. And there we go. That's pretty much everything in place exactly as we want it to be. So let's just save our work and take a look at this in action. So we'll update that and we'll just click on the little preview icon to open up a new tab and allow us to see exactly what this looks like. And there we go. This is our fully finished page. So there's our parallax effect at the top with our custom header. There's our different pieces of information as we scroll through. You can see everything is nice and neatly laid out and looking pretty cool. Now, just to wrap things up a little bit, there are a couple of things that I think really need to be brought out quite soon when it comes to Brizy. First of all, when it comes to dealing with the font sizes and the font styling, it's still pretty limited. We've got a maximum of 100 pixels for any font size, which just isn't enough. We don't have any option for dealing with things like forcing text to be uppercase, capitalized, and so on. So you've got to manually put your text in that format, which is kind of a little bit annoying. But other than that, I think Brizy's made a great start. Hopefully what you've seen in this video is it's very, very easy to start creating your own pages, either using the building block elements, using them as a basis to actually then go in and change to get exactly what you want from it, or how easy it is to start creating your own custom layouts just by using the Brizy tools. Well, that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to show you. Hopefully what you've seen is that it's very easy to use Brizy to create your pages using any of the different options we've covered in this video. Yes, there's still some deficiencies in the software, but it's still only 2 months old. So I can see with the roadmap they've got ahead of them and the pro version in development, we're going to have a fantastic foundation that's going to rival some of the other big page builders. Well, what did you think of this video? Did you find it useful? If you did, please give it a thumbs up, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we add new content. As always, let's get a conversation going on what you think of the good things and the bad things about Brizy. Do you like it? Have you tried it? Or do you think it's just not for you? Pop those comments in the comment section below and let's get a conversation started. As always, my name's been Paul C. This has been WPTuts, and until next time, take care.